but welcome everyone who's here now. I do see a lot of familiar names and faces, but some new names and faces as well. My name's Brett Thielen. I am the Science Director at the Harris Center for Conservation Education, who's hosting tonight's Zoom. For those of you who might be new to us, there might be a few of you, we're a nonprofit organization based in the Monadnock region of Southwest New Hampshire, United States, because this is an international talk tonight. We connect people to the natural world through land protection, conservation research, and education for all ages. So any of you who are local to us and don't know already, we've protected more than 24,000 acres of land from development. Much of that is open for hiking and birding and other recreation. We coordinate conservation research projects on that land and then throughout the region through a number of community science initiatives where we train volunteers to collect different kinds of data. And then projects like the Pack Monadnock Raptor Observatory, which is how we are connected to Kashmir's hawkwatching project that we're going to be hearing about tonight. And then at the heart of everything that we do is education, from babies in backpacks to residents, retirement communities, and all points in between. We've got teacher naturalists working with thousands of students every year in more than 30 schools that bring kids outside to learn about nature in their schoolyards and backyards. Great, thanks, Miles. And so now I've asked Phil Brown to join us to introduce Kashmir because Phil is our Hawkwatch coordinator. He's been coordinating the Pack Monadnock Raptor Observatory for what, a dozen years, Phil?
Something like that.
And so he's, as many of you know, a wonderful birder, a wonderful teacher, and our Hawkwatch coordinator. We've been partnering with New Hampshire Audubon to help run the Pack Monadnock Hawkwatch for a few years now. We've been so excited to be part of it. And so it's through that work that Phil and Kashmir have come to know each other, I think, over many years. So I've asked Phil to introduce Kashmir. So Phil, take it away.
Okay, well, thank you, Brett. And nice to see a lot of familiar faces and some new faces here on the Zoom call tonight to learn about Veracruz River Raptors and what's flying down the flyway from our site to theirs, maybe in some cases. So I'm fresh from the Pack Monadnock Hawkwatch today, where we had a grand total of about 5 migrating birds. Not a great day for migration today, but yeah, Kashmir knows how that goes too. It can be slow some days, but we're connected on various flyways, and the broad-winged hawk is probably a bird that connects us more than any other from New England and north of us to Veracruz and south of them. The broad-winged hawks pass completely out of their breeding range. They're a complete migrant, so they leave the northern US and Canada, and they migrate through a narrow passage between the Gulf of Mexico and the mountains of Mexico. And Kashmir will tell us all about that, among other things. So broad-winged hawks at this point are beyond us, and I know Kashmir and others in Veracruz are seeing a lot of those now. So look forward to hearing about that. And just a little comparison. So Pack Monadnock, on a really good year, we might have 20,000 migrating birds past Pack Monadnock in 75 days. And it's pretty spectacular. When that happens, we are all high fives, and it's the greatest year ever. That might be a really good hour for the Veracruz Hawkwatch. So that's the kind of scale that we're talking. With that, I'll introduce Kashmir Wolf. He joined the Veracruz River Raptors project in 2008, and he's now the project coordinator. He graduated from college and has been working with birds since then in Mexico and throughout the region. He went to work for Hawk Mountain Sanctuary as an intern in 2010, where a lot of raptor biologists get their start. He's also worked in the US for doing endangered species work with black-capped vireo and golden-cheeked warblers in Texas and Oklahoma. And from these experiences and lots of others, he's been known as a very fantastic bird guide. He's learned a lot about birds of that region and the Central America part of the world. And he's a really coveted person to go out birding with. I've seen him in action at the Veracruz Hawkwatch a couple of times since I've been down there, and his reputation precedes him. So with that, I'm going to introduce Kashmir Wolf, and I'll stop talking. All right. Thanks, Kashmir. Welcome.
Thanks, Phil, and thanks everyone for joining this afternoon. And we want to learn a little bit about the river raptors down here in Veracruz, Mexico. And yes, as Phil was talking, one of the species that link us very much is the broadwing hawk, since we pretty much count the 95% of the total population. And yeah, we'll see along the presentation the numbers that we get. We will have some videos about what you can see if you are coming to Veracruz to enjoy this natural event that has been for thousands of years happening. And probably pre-Hispanic towns were watching this as we are counting now, probably in more numbers that we cannot imagine even. So one of the first and very important natural barriers that makes the Veracruz river raptors get that huge amount of birds migrating during the fall is that we have the Gulf of Mexico in one side, and in the other side we have the Sierra Madre, which is a very long mountain range that you can see here in the map, and along with other ranges that cross pretty much half of the country, the south portion of the country. And that makes a bird collector is the funnel that gathers thousands of raptors every fall during at least a little bit more over 3 months of migrating time, or a period of migration. And what happened in this area is in all that flat between the Gulf of Mexico and the mountain range, we have a thermal activity, a very high thermal activity place. And if you go and played with a hockey, a table hockey, you see that the talking floats over the table because it has a lot of holes that is pushing air. And it's the same. The birds are moving because these thermals push the raptors up, and they're circling because they're taking the thermal. And once they reach a nice height, they lift southward and also trying to reach another thermal. And that's the way they're like jumping to thermals, between thermals. And that's the way they move, and is the cheapest way for them to save energy. So less flapping makes more fuel efficiency. And that's what they do. And this is one of the views of that bottleneck. This is the last mountain range that we see, like above, like to the north from the observatory. And most of the raptors will follow that ridge and then continue south, but they're getting like compact. So they're getting tight. And of course that makes the more raptors to gather together. And that's one of the views from the last part of the Sierra. And this is what happened. And these are different. So what you can see between one video and the other is that they were like circling, and they were going like anywhere, like pretty much making circles, every single bird. And in this video, they're flying straight. And that's when they leave each thermal. And in this video, we will see more or less 5,000 birds in around a minute. So just to give you an idea how much can be lost if we don't have experienced counters doing this.
This might be a good time to ask that question that Brett just posed and just get an answer. How do you count them when there's such a mass like that, 5,000 birds?
So yeah, so what we do, we have divide the sky, like this is the view of the observatory, and we have three counters. This is one counter, one assistant that taking care of the west, while this counter is watching east, and he's counting a line. And you can see he has a clicker on his hands, and in that portion is you have to have three clickers at least, and this most when we have the main uh, bulk of the migration with a mixture of species, and each clicker is going to have at times like 5 times turkey vultures. In the other clicker is going to be five times Swainsons or Broadwing hogs. Sometimes it's 10 times. The plus will be 10 or 20 or 50 when it's like this, like the ones we saw in the video. You have to go by 20s or by 50, so that way you can count, and this is in a few seconds. Like the brain and your decisions as a counter, you have to be very sharp, like watching the whole line, like from once you reach the tip, you have to scan all the way down to have an idea if it's going to be all the time thick or it has a lower portion, so you can handle different clickers, so that amount can be lower or higher depending on how thick the line is. and and this is like in this slide you can see the timing for the main species that makes this 95%. And in August we have the Mississippi kites, and then by the middle of September we start getting a big numbers of Broadwing hogs, and the mixture of species between Broadwing hogs, Swainsons, and turkey vultures occur by late September, beginning of October, where you can see those bars changing. And after the Broadwing hogs, that is around the 10th of October, we get many of the Swainson's hog, and then the Swainson's hog live by these days. Like actually, we are getting less numbers of Swainson's hog, but we are getting more numbers of the turkey vultures. But in that period of time between September 30, more or less, to October 18 or 17, we, like all the counters, they pretty much will have three clickers in their hands, because they're going to be counting different species and different pluses. Like they multiply differently from each species, and sometimes you have other the other migrants like northern harriers, peregrine falcons, kestrels, red tails, greyhawks, others migrating, and the counter that is in charge of the east has to spot everything from his side, and the same happen with the other counter that is watching the west side, and the assistant is the one that is collecting all the information, and also he has to count when there is like so many birds in the sky. And when it's like the very big days, like here we can, like in this graph, October the 3rd was a peak day, or October the 2nd was peak day for Broadwing hogs. Like in that time, the assistant has to help counting, and sometimes we have other counters that are volunteer in those days, because it requires a lot of hands, a lot of eyes, and a lot of communication. And this year we have closed Cardell station, and we are counting just for one side. But when we have the two sites, we coordinate by radio because there is sometimes huge lines that can be seen between the both of the sites, and we need to know each other, like who is going to count the line, so that way we don't double count, and we keep communication pretty much the whole day between these two counting stations, and that's the way we avoid double counting. And for the Mississippi kites, the average is around 200,000 birds. This year we are over the 300,000, and this has been a good year for this species. And the next species is the broadwing hawk, and this is for the both sites combined. It's not just for Chichicaxtli, as you will see later in one of the slides. But yeah, this is the other dominant species with almost 1.5 million birds that pass during the fall. And then the Swainson's hawk, we don't get much of them, but at least we have around 500,000, some years a little bit less, some other years we have over the 500,000. And for the turkey vultures, they have been always around 1.5 million. Most of the times is 1.7, 1.8, but this is one of the most, the turkey vulture with the brown-winged hawk, they're the ones over 1.5 million birds. So they together can do the 3 million total for the whole season. And this is what has been so far today. And this is the data for Chichicaxtli. And we can see that we already break over the 2 million birds, being the broadwing hawk, one of the dominants, followed by the Mississippi kites, that they're already gone. Then the Swainson's hawk that are almost gone as well. We of course have unknown raptors because we cannot identify everything, and particularly when they're like flying very long distance away from the observatory and against the sunlight. Sometimes we decide we don't want to burn the observer's eyes, and all that information goes as a unidentified raptors. And we count other migrants as well as wood storks, aningas, American white pelican that we already these days we have more than 10,000 American white pelicans, and big sissels, white-winged doves. There is many other birds that we keep track during the station. And something particular about the area or enjoying the migration in this site, like in the Veracruz River Raptors, is once we have this building that helps observers to enjoy the migration, but also the area is very good for going birding. Like we have nice trails close to the river, and because we're very close to one of the main rivers of Veracruz, and that provides a lot of different ecosystems. And there's a mixture in the landscape of forests, plantations, etc. And here we can see on our eBird list, because we enter everything every day into eBird. They combine every single species that was identified, plus all the species that were counted in the raptors, raptor-wise. And you can see how many species use the observatory, and the Hotel Bienvenido in Cardel has report just for that spot.
Can you tell us a little bit about the hotel? I don't know if you're going to be talking about that later, but since you mentioned it as the primary hawkwatch site in past years.
Yeah, the Hotel Bienvenido has been a partnership with the owner of the hotel since the beginning, and is the tallest building in Cardel City. And from that location, we monitor everything close to the Gulf and towards Chichicaxtli, because Cardel is located to the east of Chichicaxtla, where is the main observatory. And combined between Cardel and Chichicaxtla, we cover around 20 kilometers of the migration corridor. And that side in Cardel, we get most of the falcons because they tend to fly closer to the shore, and sometimes we get some like gulls and frigate birds, etc. that are, because it's not that far from the ocean. We're just a couple, like 6-7 kilometers away. And yeah, that's for the Hotel Bienvenido. It's in the downtown of Cardel. But this year we're not counting from that side. But yeah, just close from the observatories, we have, as I was telling, like good places for going for a walk. We have tours that support the river raptors as well. And many of the species, we have the laughing falcon, like rough cap warbler. There's a lot of birds, and also there is some nice views of the volcano Pico de Orizaba. And also, the area is known for a lot of cultural places and pre-Hispanic, the archaeological hotspots. Like this one is in Puala, and this is on the way between the mountain range and the campsites. So watching the migration from there is a really nice experience, because you are like stepping where indigenous towns were centuries ago. And can you imagine like watching the migration for them, what can be? And so far I haven't not found any evidence in the literature that connects something with the river raptors, with the hawk migration, with this culture. But I'm very sure there was a lot of going on when they were watching these migrants, like this other spot that is in a mountain, and this is a cemetery. And can you imagine making the ceremony, the ceremony, and then having the huge migrants passing just over those canopy trees? Should be like really exciting moment, or we have no idea how important for them was that. And other important things about birding or coming to Veracruz is we have some endemics like the Mexican sheartail, but also the views of the raptors, the hawks, like the sun-tailed hawk as well, or some other hummingbirds like the buff-bellied hummingbird. We have, of course, some euphonias that they're gathered around the observatory, and those are very nice birds. And something important about the project being in that place in Veracruz, in the Central Coast, is that we have to work with communities, we have to work with landowners, and one of the main activities, as well as many others that we have in ProNatura, is land certification and also protecting area. And we help people, we get close to the people, to the landowners, and we explain them some of the reasons why they should be keeping a portion of their forest, or why not making a private reserve. And so far it has been a success. And also the environmental activities, like this is the inside of the observatory, and in the regular years, every Tuesday and Thursday, we run workshops for kids from the town, but also we visit and work with the local schools with some environmental courses. And like with a mixture of that, like talking with landowners, working with school, with people, like so far we have protected or certified protected areas being like almost 70 or above 70,000 acres just in Veracruz, in Veracruz area in the state. And this is how you can follow also the River Raptors. This is a Facebook page. And also, if you are interested in see how every day is going, there is the dunkadu.org site where you can find many observatories or many hawk watches in the US, but also you can find another one that is the River Raptors in Veracruz, where you can go and see like every every minute update. Like we are online counting, and everything that has been seen by the counters is going to be available for you if you follow that. And of course, you can go and take a look in our websites. And before ending, I want to thank also all the donors that helped this season going, because that was very important for us and is very important for the project. And we appreciate a lot the support for many of the donors that make possible this season. So thank you so much, and hope you will visit us in the coming future. Why not next year? So thank you.
Thank you so much. That was, I'm new to all of this hawk watching, international hawk watching. So that was really fascinating and all new information for me. I'm sure it was for some of our guests as well. Does anyone have questions that they would like to ask? So one just came in. Are there hawkwatch stations further south than Veracruz? Are you in touch with them? Do you keep track of where birds go after they pass your spot, or is yours the kind of southern end of the road for the monitoring?
Yeah, sometimes we get we get in talk, like the ones, for example, we monitor the one in Corpus Christi because we know the birds, if they have a good flight, we estimate that the 3 days average that those birds will expand. And also in the south, we keep also contact. There is one new observatory in Colombia, and we keep also communication with them, and sometimes with the people in Panama. But yeah, and sometimes the observatory in Belize, there is some people that sometimes ask like, how is everything going, and we keep track. And there is another, it's not a station actually, but there is some projects that are monitoring in the Istmus, like before, like in the Chiapas area, which is a southern state that is bordered with Guatemala. And they are counting also because there's some wind farms, and sometimes they are also like asking or watching like how the flight is going. Some people has been working in those sites as well, and they communicate as well. But yeah, there's like this is something we have to be looking about, how is other sites going, and also other sites contact us or watch us, how is the River Raptors going, so they can have an idea what they will be expecting.
A similar question on the same topic. So is there a connection of those birds passing between the eastern part of Mexico and then across eventually the mountains to the western part and into areas like Panama, presumably, where they're counting birds, and maybe in western portions of the mountains? So, is there a narrow pass where sometimes raptors move across the mountain chain that we know about?
Yeah, there is a gap. Like after they leave the bottleneck in Veracruz, there is a gap between the sierras in southern Mexico that they move to the west. And after that, they follow pretty much the Pacific coast, and they keep going even to like all the way to Panama, where they get another huge concentration of raptors as well. And it's the same. Is you have the Pacific Ocean as a barrier, and then you have the mountains, and that makes again a nice concentration of raptors particularly.
So are there the same kind of thermal activity on the Pacific coast that we see in the Atlantic coast?
In the Pacific, in the Mexican side, yes, like we know there is a lot of thermal activity, and it's similar. The conditions is similar. You will have um, uh, you have the ocean from one side, you have a flat area, like long strip area, and then you have the mountains. And basically that also provides a lot of thermal activity in that region. And that's the way the birds are like, there is they use the isthmus because there is tailwind blowing pretty much every day and very strong winds. And that's the fastest way they took. They're being like, they're getting into like a train, an expressway to cross over those ridges, and then they get over that plateau that links the the east with the west side of in this area.
So a related question, there's a few that have come in, but I'm going to ask this one first because it's kind of connected, is where do they finally land once they're done with their southbound migration? And, you know, how long do they stay there? And are they in groups when they're down there, or are they dispersed out into the forest like they are during their breeding season?
Yeah, this have like different answers. And talking about migrating as a group, one of the advantages for migrating in flocks is that first you will find thermals faster. Second, the birds will have roosting areas. They can roost together, and by roosting together, they decrease the likelihood of being hunted. But wherever happens on the ground that can climb trees, so they lower the percentage of being attacked by being all the group together. One disadvantage is that they can fight for roosting places, because sometimes, and that's one of the most related uh, hazards for birds, is that we are taking a lot of the habitat, we are decreasing tree cover, and that affects the birds where they're going to be roosting. So every day they roost during the afternoons. They find a nice place where they can roost, particularly with trees. But sometimes, like near the abandoning station that we have used sand dunes, we have found birds just perch on the ground. And that is because there is no other place where they can roost. And sometimes this happen more often is there is a storm, so they're pushed to land other than keeping flapping. And after passing Veracruz, there is some birds that are eating on the way, like northern harriers. They're known to spend at least 10 or 15 days in one area, getting fat again, and then they will continue their migration. But others, like turkey vultures or broadwing hogs, they already have enough fat to complete their journey, and this very rare to see them eating. But Mississippi kites, there's something interesting with these guys, because they seems like they're timing their migration with the dragonflies migration. We have seen many, like every day you will find hundreds of Mississippi kites foraging while they're migrating, and they're foraging from dragonflies. And we have monitored the dragonfly migration for at least 5 years, from 2010 to 2015. And we found out that there is as well millions of dragonflies migrating at a few species that are the main migrants, like wandering glider is one of the most particular species. and the Mississippi kites are flying with them and eating on the wing. And once they passing or they're passing Veracruz, as I was telling, they have different timing as well, but they do not reach the same areas. Broadwing hawks, they will be spending the winter in Colombia area, Brazil, while Swainson's hawk and Mississippi kites, they will go as far pretty much as Argentina. And turkey vultures is the same, they go around the Amazon area, Colombia, Venezuela, etc. And for accipiters, for example, they spend the winter even here in Veracruz for some of them. Some others go to Central America, and that's the way they pass Veracruz, but they don't reach the same destination. They have different destinations where they're going to be expending the winter time, and then they will be coming back again in February, March, April, May, depending on the species. And this is something can be strange, and not many people know that, for example, turkey vultures are the last ones migrating here, but are going to be the first one migrating. And the opposite occurs with Mississippi kites. They're the first one during the fall, and they're going to be the last ones during the spring. And yeah, I hope I covered the.
Yes.
And what is the season for hawk monitoring in the spring, if there is one currently? What would you say the best months would be at Veracruz?
Yeah, for Veracruz will be March, and there was a hawk watch a few years ago, and because of the funds, we couldn't continue that project. But at least we know that March, April, those 2 months are good for enjoying the migration. And even if they have also their timing, you will find more mix of species during that period.
And there was a question about whether they follow the same routes as they head north as the ones that they follow in the fall to head south.
Yeah, for those migrants moving northward, they concentrate a little bit. Some portion of them concentrate, and there is another studies that were conducted from the 1990s that was counting from Chichicaxtla towards Jalapa, like going from east to west, and there was a spot a few kilometers, like 20 kilometers away from Chichicaxtla, where the counts gather around 1.5 million birds. But what happened during the spring is that the thermal activity is stronger than during the fall. And what happened is the birds can fly more straight line, and they can fly over the mountains. Like I live in the cloud forest, like in Jalapa area, which is around 3,000 feet in elevation. And we have a big flux also of migrants during the spring. And of course, if you go down like between the 1,000 feet, you will get another big numbers, more than in Jalapa. But what happened is that the thermal activity is wider, so they don't need to follow a particular corridor to complete their migration. And
And
this is just, yeah,
they're
this
probably
is,
a lot fewer to start with, also because of the winter has taken a toll on some of the first year birds, I'm guessing. So fewer birds in the spring.
yeah, because they're flying in different ways, you will get lower, like less concentrate numbers. And yeah, if we decide, like for example, the count site that was in a town called Chavarrillo, that was around 300,000 birds. And if you move more to the east, you will get probably 500 and so on. But yeah, that depends from the thermals and also wind, how the wind is blowing, of course. They depend on the weather conditions, basically.
So that's a good transition to another question someone had, which is the hurricanes that have been in the Gulf this past month, and whether what you know about the impact that that might have had, whether it altered the flight path of these birds or whether they end up in Veracruz regardless, and how that might affect them.
Yeah, the hurricane situation, this affects every year, and it depends. Like if we are getting close to the peak days, when the one of the main part of the population is passing, what happened is that the wind push all the birds to the west, and sometimes away from our view our view spots, and we will miss a lot of numbers if the hurricane hits in the particular time when the big mass of birds are passing. But when there is those days we, like, if you remember in the graph, there is always gaps. The graphs goes ups and down because of the species shift, and sometimes the hurricane do not uh, do not affect much of the count because it's during this lower period of counting. But yeah, definitely any strong wind from the east is going to affect us, and it's going to affect the count. The birds will find another way. We have seen many times how the flocks are like watching, like we can see the mountain range. We sometimes are a lot available. We are in a good position to see the storm, and a nice or consider a flock is moving away and like going around that storm. And that's what it happens in these particular events. They can even go ahead and go around, or they will need to roost and wait. And this is one of the most common situations. We have a week of rain, the storm, there's a hurricane, and we're not counting anything. And once that happens, we get this what we call the peak days, because all the birds were behind the storm. Like they were they roost, their weight, and there is more birds coming from the north, but they're finding this blockage. And once the blockage is gone, we have a rain of birds. And yeah, that's how the weather affects, in like particular with strong winds or hurricanes, like the tropical storms particularly.
I see a question about bottlenecks, other bottlenecks that raptors have to go through other than Veracruz. I know Veracruz is the most extreme because of the ocean and the mountains meeting, and just that entire mass of North America's population coming through. But do you know of any other spots that may funnel the raptors the same way? Is Panama? I know Panama has millions of birds as well. So there's probably some similar features there.
Yeah, I like, because of the magnitude and the width of the landscape in Veracruz, that makes a unique and very big bottleneck. But there is other, like in the Chiapas area that I was talking about, and but that is smaller. The some of the the main flocks, there is two ways they can take. They can go either way of the mountain range, being the west side, the most common way they took. But yeah, they can go along the central Chiapas area, which is the other side of the mountain range, the northeast side of that range. And then I know there is some places in El Salvador where they can a little bit lower, I mean, narrower their groups, but there is not as in Veracruz, and of course the one in Panama is very important also because of the continent being very narrow. So
I can add a little bit to that just from a continental perspective. The Great Lakes in the US are also features that may bottleneck raptors because they're large water bodies that birds have to go around. And in Europe and in Asia, some of the seas, the Mediterranean Sea is one of the features where birds will fly along the eastern edge of the Mediterranean Sea. Many millions will pass there. And some will funnel through the southern tip of Spain into Africa as a major migratory corridor also.
All right, I'll ask Miles his question. Maybe that'll be our last question, unless someone else has any. He's wondering about all those birds overhead, and if guano is an issue as they're passing overhead. If you need to wear protective headwear or goggles or anything, or if they're not doing that in flight.
I think I didn't get the question right.
Miles is wondering if the birds are pooping on the observers as they pass by, and if you have to protect yourself by wearing hats or goggles or anything.
Lucky for us, not, but we have seen them doing it, but not as, yeah, it's not something you will see every day. Like it's rare, but it happens. But so far so good. We haven't been attacked that way.
Thank you. I have a couple that I think would be a good use of time here. I wanted to hear a little bit about Kashmir's early introduction to birds and raptors and what fascinated you. Was it somewhere you grew up, or did you see this when you were a kid? Curious to hear your story.
Sure. Yeah, in the town I grew up, that is 20 kilometers east from Chichicaxtli. And that place is on the way of the northward migration. I mean, you sometimes during the fall you will see some groups, but yeah, I grew up in that town, and I was in elementary school when there were interest from some university teachers to go to that town, and in particular to my dad's place, because he had like some land and is forested all the time. He decided to keep it as a reserve, and has been like that since we got there. And in those groups there were people from the biology class that were into birds. And I began collecting insects for one of the entomologists. And when they when they gave me a pair of binos and they started looking for birds, I said, well, I'm gonna move the subject into birds. So I started birding when I was around 11, 12. And since then, I started learning about birds. I started my checklist on my backyard. I remember drawing, because I found a rare bird, a new species, and I make a drawing. It was a hooded warbler that I showed to my friend, like, hey, look what I found, because I had the Peterson field guide from Mexico, Birds of Mexico, and didn't have the migrants, the migratory warblers. And this, well, if it's not in the book, it's something new. So I was really excited. And then she told me, like, no, this is a hooded warbler. And then I learned about the other guys, and I'm learning about the migratory birds. And in that time, I started learning about the migrants that I was watching from my town during the spring. And later I joined the spring count in Chavarrillo, which is close to Jalapa City. And I started learning how to identify the raptors. And after that, in 2008, I was doing my social service with ProNatura in the river raptors. And since then, I got hooked with this project, with birds and with raptors as well.
Wonderful. Thanks for sharing some of that. That's really interesting to hear your background as a young birder, and sounds like you had some good direction from organizations nearby then to help you with that. Was ProNatura one of those organizations? Yeah, great. And you're working for them today. That's pretty exceptional. Well, I wanted to ask about, for folks who are interested in a little bit more in maybe experiencing this when the pandemic is over, when we can get out traveling again. How are some ways we can experience some of these wonderful places? Do you have some suggestions, and then also, you know, talk about how that supports the project? That's important to hear.
Yeah, like one of the main way that the project gets the funds is by tours, birding tours that we led during the fall, during the peak of the migratory season. And yeah, most of the tours are 10 days, and we expend at least 3 to 4 days during the count sites, so people can enjoy the raptor migration, but also can enjoy the birds in Veracruz, the culture, the food. Many people love the Mexican food, and I mean the authentic, because sometimes, like, I've been in the US and I have ordered enchiladas, and sometimes it's very hard to find a good enchilada. But yeah, it's completely is the tours are the main source for the income. If you have or if you want to know about how to join a tour, I can tell you the companies that works with us, that support the real raptors. One of them is Hamana, the Hawk Migration Association of North America, and also Hawk Mountain Sanctuary, and there is others that also support the project as well. But yeah, you can contact me if you want, or you can contact Phil or Brett directly, and they will let you, they will point you to our direction, and that way you will be supporting the project. But also the donations, like we accept donations. We have a portal in the website where people can donate. Also, I can share in the video, so can get for everyone available. If you want to donate by PayPal as well, that's other way to help this project going.
Wonderful. Thank you. So I think that's a good stopping point, unless Phil, you had one last burning question. No. So thank you so much. This was really wonderful, and we've all learned so much, and we hope to see you in Mexico maybe next year. And the one downside of Zoom talks is you can't hear everybody clapping for you, but we are all clapping for you in our home offices and homes and living rooms, and we just really are grateful for your time and your expertise and your stories. And thank you, and thanks everyone for joining us, and until next time.
Yeah, thank you everyone, and it was really nice talking to you and bringing some of the real Raptors experience as well.
Thanks, Kashmir.